Mayor Lucas, the Washington Post just put KC on the national spotlight, but not in the way we want. They called out the Sunfresh on Linwood Prospect as government-run grocery store with empty shelves, even though it's privately operated. Taxpayers put up $750,000 to help keep it afloat, and it still lost nearly $900,000 last year. Now, with food prices sky high and millions of Americans losing food assistance, what's the real plan for food access in our underserved neighborhoods? Are the city-supported grocery stores actually the answer, or just a well-meaning idea with no meat on the shelves, Mayor Lucas?
What I would say is this. First of all, look, I have as many critiques, questions, challenges for the Sunfresh on Prospect as anybody, but I'll never be ashamed of trying to make sure there is government support for private investments and things like access to groceries on Prospect and on the east side of Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri spends $14 million a year subsidizing Power and Light District. We spend $50 million a year subsidizing our professional sports teams. So to me, it sounds like $750,000 trying to make sure people have access to food is something that actually is a good investment for us. We actually did help subsidize the Aldi that's on Prospect, right? We've managed to help lots of other places, the Constantino's grocery store downtown. So I'm always trying to get it right, but those who are trying to make some political hay out of things are just trying to play political games that aren't relevant to Kansas City at a time I think the Trump administration is having issues with its defunding of rural health care. I also make this point for people in our own community, because I did read that article. I will never get talking mess on your own neighborhood. And sometimes there are people that just seem to have this love of looking at all the problems in their own spot, not looking at the fact that that same thing is happening, right, eons more in others. So I'll continue to support responsible investments and access to needs like groceries in Kansas City on Prospect until I'm done being mayor.
Mayor Q, Jackson County lawmakers override Frank Wright's vetoes, including recall elections. Been a lot of controversy around that for the past week or so. Do you have any comments on this?
I mean, I don't want to give y'all bad radio. I want to be like, no.
Nah, it's gonna be good radio. Whatever your response is, it's gonna be good radio.
I thought I'd ask.
Come on.
It got nothing to do with me. No, I'll say this. Look, I respect everybody. I respect the democratic process. It looks like there were 42,000 signatures turned in. I think 98,000 signed. I think it's almost certain we're going to have an election. There's a question as to when. The courts are deciding that. I just hope for the balance of all of it, Jackson County can get things moving forward. They can all figure out everything going on there. Because at its core, right, county government actually isn't required to do like that much, right? It is collect taxes, right? Make sure you're running a jail, maintaining it, and make sure you're supporting some of the causes like combat. I appreciate those who are trying to get them back on track with that. And I'm going to stay out of it from there. But I hope it all gets figured out for the sake of all of us who live in Jackson County.
Understood.
Yeah, I might need to throw my hat in for Jackson County executive. You want to work with me, Mayor Lucas? What's up?
You gonna DJ the meetings?
True. I got enough of my own meetings. I'm just trying to make sure my city council's happy, all of that. And so we staying out of the news, if y'all notice. We leave it for everybody else later.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Kansas City just committed $800,000 in zero grants to fight youth homelessness. I love this. And got to say, it's encouraging to see. But for people living it daily, Mayor Lucas, the problem still feels overwhelming a lot of times. What does success actually look like with this investment? And how do we make sure that this is a real path off of the streets for KC's most vulnerable young people?
What I will say is this. I mean, I think what you have to recognize first is if there's somebody who's living on the streets, particularly if they fall into a life of dependency, the number of times they get arrested, the number of times they're living on the system, it ends up costing so much money. So for me, a path to success is actually going to be counted in ones and twos, then dozens, then 20s, then hundreds. We've got about, at our last census, 2,000 people who are experiencing homelessness in Kansas City. And while, a lot of people think you just build a big old shelter, you throw 2,000 people in and it's going to work, that of course is ridiculous and not how it's done. You got to invest in people. You got to make sure they have wraparound services. And particularly if you do it young, There are very few people that I meet on the streets who had a bad shake at 45 and all of a sudden ended up in the streets, after that. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. But most of the time, it's somebody who left home when they were a teenager, sometimes 14, 15, they find their way into trouble, their independency, and they're living like that for generations. That's why we're going to try to make a difference now. That's why you're seeing this investment. And I think this investment, importantly, will help us save lives. So look, people try to knock me off all the time. I'm proud to be in a city where, yeah, I dance with the cheerleaders at Center High School. I'm proud to be in a city where we're invested in groceries. I'm proud to be in a city where we're invested in mental health for people of all ages. And we're going to continue to do that for as long as I'm around. It's not just paying for the Chiefs and Royals, ladies and gentlemen. It's paying for our community. And that's probably the real priority that we need.
Thank you so much for your time every single Monday, Mayor Lucas. We appreciate you. Have a good one and be a blessing this week.
All right, y'all. Take care. We'll see you around.